And what's one skill future dental leaders must develop beyond clinical excellence if they want to leverage AI?
This is the most important one.
This is the TechDental Podcast, the strategic intelligence hub for leaders shaping the dental industry. We break down how AI, data, and operating discipline drive performance and scale. I'm Dr. Randeep. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the TechDental Podcast. On this show, we don't chase AI headlines. We focus on how real dental businesses actually operate, scale, and make decisions. Most AI conversations in dentistry are still happening at the surface level: tools, prompts, dashboards. But the real leverage sits underneath that, in systems, workflows, and decision ownership. My guest today approaches AI from exactly that angle. Robert Hangu is the founder of Next Operations. He works with operators to design systems that scale before AI ever touches the business. Robert, welcome to the show.
It's great being on the show, Randeep. Thank you.
You've been quite outspoken about what you call AI Cowboys. From your perspective, what is the biggest mistake leaders make when they first adopt AI?
Yeah, that's a good question. I adopted this term AI Cowboys back when AI started to become a thing, generative AI. This is 2023, beginning of 2024. It was this hype that AI can do everything, and you would have these, let's say, people who came from adjacent industries, not particularly tech, especially marketing, sales, and they would repackage themselves as AI specialists. While this might make sense in terms of their expertise and their marketing sales expertise, that is basically a core, let's say, application of AI, they were lacking the solid foundations, right? They were lacking the decision-making skills to decide, okay, which system to choose over the other, some decisions that require some technical background to do them right. Plus, they were very, let's say, loud and outspoken on LinkedIn. So that reminded me a lot of Cowboys.
So I want to really ground this for the audience. You've worked on call handling systems outside dentistry where volumes are very real. Thousands of inbound calls per month, out of hours demand, and peak time overload. When AI is layered onto a business like that without fixing ownership, workflows, or decision rules first, what actually happens operationally over the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, that's a good question. With the businesses that I'm working with, the biggest mistake that I see is they don't structure the data in a proper way. Or let's say some of them don't even have data written down in any systems. They have it in their minds. Now, I work with the front-facing part of the business, with front desks, with receptionists that receive calls, make appointments, answer different questions to the caller regarding their appointments or different services. And this is especially important for new clients, right? Be it patients, be it, for example, in home services businesses, in property management businesses, where it's very important to not lose these calls because they mean new business. And we see it especially in the healthcare world, in clinics, where a potential patient may call different practices and they would go with the first or second that picks up the phone, especially if there's an emergency. Now, not picking up the phone means basically losing real revenue. And we often see that these front desks, they don't have, let's say, a written system or a process. So the first thing we do is we try to gather all the knowledge that they have. We try to structure it in a proper way. We create call scripts, and then we feed it into the AI and train it. This is our approach.
What really strikes me here is that this isn't really even about call centers or AI at all. In dentistry, missed calls aren't just an admin issue, they're a silent revenue leak. And whether you fix that leak or tolerate it, it often comes down to leadership attitude, not the technology. For me, I think AI just removes the excuses. And that really leads me neatly into something that you talk about a lot, and that's the difference between automation and real leverage. You've said that surface level automation is the wrong starting point and that API level integration matters far more. Why does that distinction matter so much in dentistry?
Yeah, this is a very good point. Now, we can see that the surface level integration is, especially when we talk about the front facing part, you can have a very simple voice solution or AI voice agent that just answers very simple questions like, when are your opening hours? Or where can I find your clinic? Do you offer parking and stuff like that? And the problem with these solutions is they don't really offer, let's say, deep help, deep information, right? Because most of the time the patient wants to know about what the clinic offers or what they want to book an appointment right away. And they don't want to have a double booking, right? This is very important. So for this, we need to integrate with the practice management systems that doctors have, that clinics have. So this is what we call deep integration. It's extending this AI agent, if you like, which is, let's say, the brain. We give it, let's say, hands and feet so it can do things. It can book appointments. It can check for double bookings, or it can reschedule an appointment when a patient calls and says, I can't come at that time anymore. When is the next available slot? Or any concerns that they might have. So think of it as a, let's say, human receptionist, but available 24/7, around the clock. They don't get tired. So this is why this deep integration is so important, because only that level of integration allows for a real offloading of work from the front desk to the AI.
Robert, if a dental group has fragmented data and undocumented workflows, what actually happens when they deploy AI agents across the business? In dentistry, a lot of the data is still quite fragmented, and the end users, the business leaders really want to implement this. But I think where the frustration is, a lot of what's promised by AI really is dependent on the underlying data architecture being standardized and clean. So what effect would that have in a large organization that wants to implement some of your AI, but they have fragmented data? Is it something that can still work, or is it something that you can work on with them in collaboration?
Yeah, this is a great question. So fragmented data is, let's say, the main problem that has been around not only since generative AI and since the AI agents. It's been around ever since, let's say, AI or machine learning, right? We had, for example, recommender systems, or we had different systems that try to predict, or statistical systems that try to predict, let's say, like an outcome, like, for example, in e-commerce or in the medical field, especially for image recognition and so on. During all of this time, structured data was, or getting data in a structured way was the most difficult problem, right? And now there is no difference with generative AI. And to answer your question, we would work together with the organizations to gather all the different pieces of data, talking to everybody who is involved in that process, who might have certain, let's say, unwritten rules in their mind or how they process things. Because most of the data, or let's say most of the day-to-day practical things, they're unspoken, right? Maybe a front desk might have a particular script that they have been trained on, but then over time, over the months and years that they work in the clinic, some things might change. They might adopt their own style, or they might realize some things work, some things don't. And oftentimes they don't get back to change that script. So we end up training the system with a particular script, but then when we test it with the actual front desk or with particular patients, then we get the feedback, why doesn't the AI respond in such and such way? And then we realize that the expectation was different than the actual training data, because there was never a time when somebody got back and rewrote the data. So I think there are two things here. We have data in silos, in different data sources, databases, in the minds of people. And then we have this other factor that data is not being updated timely. So these are basically the two things that we work with, and we work together with the particular stakeholders to make sure everything is in the same place, everything makes sense, and the AI has clean data to be trained on such that it responds in a proper way.
And I think what's interesting is that the same pattern shows up everywhere, whether it's phones, recalls, scheduling, or treatment acceptance. AI doesn't create discipline. I think it enforces whatever discipline already exists, which is why the cost of getting this wrong increases dramatically as you scale. Looking at this from, say, an investment or an acquirer lens, how do systems maturity and interoperability actually show up in, say, a valuation of a business?
I think it's very important to keep in mind that everything in a business boils down to operations, right? The better the operations, the better the business works without the, let's say, the owner, right? If we are looking through a lens of probably a practice owner wanting to build up their operations in such a way that they want to sell the practice, or they want to retire, or maybe they want to open up a second clinic. So the point here is that AI and technology in general, but AI especially now that we're in this era of AI explosion, it does nothing else than streamline operations. So it is, let's say, one more piece that can make the whole system work with as little human input as possible, right? So if leveraged correctly, AI can be an enormous operations automator, right? So if we think now from let's say from an investment perspective, you can have the same clinic serve more patients and have more revenue with the same staff. So that means you have increased revenue with the same expenses, right? Which also means you can expand your operations to a second location, a third location, and so on with the same staff. Of course, you need more doctors, you need more, let's say, the core business will still remain human, but everything that has to do with repetitive work, with scheduling, all of the, let's say, boring things, rescheduling, asking about opening hours, and so on and so forth, all of this can be automated. So think about maybe 50 to 80% of work can be automated, or put in a different way, you can take on probably double as much workload with the same staff. So it is definitely something that an investor would look at and say, okay, this is a profitable business. This is a business that does things right. And also going beyond that, it also shows that the business owner has a proactive attitude, that they think in terms of adopting new technologies, in terms of making things more efficient. So they're probably also, these are also signs that they might be let's say, somebody who's easy to work with to make the transition to the new owner as easy as possible.
And Robert, what does an AI native organization look like in practice and not theory? So for example, in a dental practice, what would that look like if they want to build out an AI native organization from the ground up? And where does human judgment still remain non-negotiable?
This is a very good point. I think the most important thing here is the attitude of both the owner and the employees, right? Like what we see is that many clinic owners, when they first get in touch with the possibilities of AI, they start to be scared a little bit. They would say something like, oh, but we already have a great front desk, we don't need AI. Or they say, we are too small for AI, or AI won't work for us for some reasons that they think would not work, but actually these are exactly the reasons why they need AI, right? So the first thing is the attitude towards technology, right? When they say, okay, we already have a stellar front desk team, then most of the time they don't consider the fact that even the best front desk teams miss 30 to 40% of incoming calls during peak time, or that 20 to 30% of calls happen out of the opening hours. Most of the clinics have an autoresponder, or they redirect potential patients to their website to book an appointment there and so on. So they feel like they are covered by this. But if the patient calls another clinic that already has AI that allows for an instant appointment booking, then the patient and new patients would go with them, right? So the first thing to building an AI native clinic or organization, it starts with being aware of these little, let's say, these little parts of the process that can be automated and that the operators or the owners aren't aware that they can be operated. So it starts with being open towards tech. And then the second thing is once they're open to it, it's actually, let's say, being ready to put in this extra work to make AI work. As I said earlier, collecting all the data from the silos, from the heads of the employees, of the operators, and putting them all in a structured manner. And as they go along, as they are using AI to actually refine the system, come back every once in a while and say, what can we improve now? Okay, we are at this stage of improvement. Can we do it better? Can we do it better? It requires a lot of extra work, but it can help completely transform the operations. It gives a 2x to 5x boost for the entire operation.
Well, I think it's interesting because the pattern I keep seeing is this, that AI, it doesn't make the businesses scalable in and of itself, but it reveals whether they already are scalable, and it makes leadership quality really impossible to hide. I would like to close now with a quick fire lightning round, short answers, which really helps to move the needle for our listeners. So if you can give me one manual task in dentistry that should already be obsolete.
It's definitely appointment booking.
And a red flag that you immediately look for when reviewing AI implementations.
It's the quality of the training data and the structure of how these documents are being fed into the AI.
And what's one skill future dental leaders must develop beyond clinical excellence if they want to leverage AI?
This is the most important one. They must develop a sense of whether a particular automation can help their particular situation.
Robert, this has been a really grounded and necessary conversation in this space. The big takeaway for leaders listening is simple. AI doesn't create leverage, systems do. AI just exposes where leadership has or hasn't done the work. Robert, where can people connect with you and learn more?
Definitely. People can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's my name, Robert Hangu. They can connect with me on Twitter. It's Robert Hangu in one word. And on YouTube, where it's rob.hng, where it's my channel where I publish AI videos about AI implementations, voice agents, and exactly what we talked about in this podcast, what to look out for, what mistakes to look out for, and how to make the best out of this technology.
Fantastic, Robert. If this episode has helped you think more clearly about AI decisions in your business, share it with a partner or ops leader today. And if you want more conversations like this, less hype, more signal, subscribe to the TechDental Podcast. Robert, thanks for joining us. You've been listening to the TechDental Podcast, strategic intelligence for dental leaders navigating structural change. If you're responsible for growth, performance, or long-term value in this industry, make sure you're subscribed. I'm your host, Dr. Randeep. We'll see you next week.